everyone. As you guys already know, my name is Haley, and I decided to do my micronutrient presentation during lesson 12 on iron. Okay, so just a brief introduction about iron. Iron is a trace mineral, which means we only need a little bit of it every day. The RDA for iron in adult women is 18 milligrams per day. And then once women reach the age of 51 and older, usually that's after menopause, is when the need for iron goes down to 8 milligrams per day. And then adult men, their RDA is 8 milligrams per day as well. So the upper levels for both male and female, ages 0 to 13, is 40 milligrams per day. And then anyone over 14, including male and female, is 45 milligrams per day. And then the average daily iron intake in the United States for men is about 17 milligrams per day, and women is about 12 milligrams per day. But of that, only 18% of dietary iron is absorbed. So while men and women are intaking about 17 and 12 milligrams per day, only 18% of what they are intaking is being absorbed. Okay, so major functions. The biggest function that iron actually plays in our body is through hemoglobin. So hemoglobin is a red protein that transports oxygen in the blood. So what hemoglobin does is take the oxygen that we breathe in through our lungs and transports the oxygen throughout our body via hemoglobin. And this is actually 2/3 of our body's iron is in hemoglobin. And then there is myoglobin, which is an iron oxygen binding protein in muscle cells and oxidative skeletal muscle fibers. So what myoglobin does is basically just plays a role in having oxygen in our muscles. Another thing that iron does is for our iron containing enzymes, what it does through that is transfers one or both oxygen atoms of O2 to the substrate parts of our body. And then I also found that iron is necessary to maintain healthy cells, healthy skin, hair, and nails as well. So food sources. Something we just need to keep in mind actually with all iron is that there are heme and non-heme. And heme and non-heme both come from two different food sources. So heme iron is usually comes from animal fleshes like red meat, pork, poultry, and seafood. And then non-heme comes from your fruits and vegetables, grains, and then supplements are always non-heme. So some vegetables and fruits are things like legumes, spinach, strawberries, raisins, and then grains, fortified food cereals. So actually a lot of our iron that we intake comes from cereal if you take cereals. And then another thing to note is that heme iron is more bioavailable, which means that through heme iron we are able to intake more actual iron into our body. Deficiency. Iron deficiency anemia is when the body doesn't have enough iron to produce hemoglobin. So iron deficiency anemia, or IDA, is basically just a shortage of iron in your body. It affects 2 billion people every year around the world. Over 30% of the world's population is affected by IDA, and it affects more people than any other condition in the world, actually. So the WHO stated that it is a public health condition of epidemic proportions. This, the way to find out if you have IDA is through a diagnosis. Usually that is done through a blood test, and the good thing about iron deficiency anemia is it is easily treatable. So symptoms for IDA, I listed them on this slide if you guys want to take a look at them, but I'm just going to go ahead and say the most common ones. So fatigue or loss of energy, shortness of breath, weakness, dizziness or lightheadedness. Usually that occurs when standing up, but it can happen whenever. And then pale skin are the most common symptoms that those who have IDA experience. Who's at risk? So this list is actually pretty hefty for those who can get iron deficiency anemia. Vegetarians and vegans can get it commonly. Teenage girls, women of childbearing age, pregnant women, people who donate blood more than 2 to 4 times a year, those with disease that affects intestines' ability to absorb nutrients, people with cancer, kidney problems, or heart problems, and then people with a high daily intake of calcium. Okay, so on the opposite side of having too little iron in your body, you can also have too much iron in your body. This is a lot less common, however. So toxicity of iron is usually referred to as iron poisoning. This can cause liver failure. To find out if you have toxicity, usually iron levels are seen through blood tests and also sometimes through x-rays. So iron toxicity causes stomach irritation and tissue damage will occur. Impaired absorption of other trace minerals occurs when there's too much iron in your body. And then free radicals are formed which damage cell membranes and DNA. Okay, so some symptoms of toxicity of iron I put on here. Just one that I wanted to point out was as well as having too much iron can cause some skin color changes. And then there's just other things that aren't very pleasant that you can get if you have too much iron in your blood. So what happens when your body has too much iron is hemochromatosis. This occurs 1 in every 200 to 500 adults. Basically, just kind of an overview of what hemochromatosis is an iron metabolism disorder that causes an increased absorption of iron. So this happens when the mucosal block that is supposed to regulate iron doesn't work anymore. So your body just absorbs a ton of iron. This usually occurs when there is a deficiency of hapsidin, which is supposed to regulate the iron in circulation. Because the iron isn't taken out, it causes buildup in major organs such as the heart, liver, pancreas, joints, and then parts of our pituitaries. And then when it's untreated, it can lead to liver disease and heart failure. Okay, so those who are at risk for having too much iron or hemochromatosis are those who can inherit it genetically. So I included a little pie chart down here at the bottom, just so you can kind of get an idea. And those who are at risk for hemochromatosis are usually those who have a genetic risk already. So usually those who have it, about 85% of them inherit it genetically. You can also receive this through numerous blood transfusions. You can get it through iron shots or injection, or just consuming too many high levels of supplemental iron. Okay, so iron's functions in metabolism. Basically, the biggest thing is just, again, hemoglobin. It's what takes oxygen in the red blood cells and releases it around to the body. Myoglobin is a big part of iron in metabolism as well. And then I saw through a study that Washington University did that the synthesis of DNA actually requires iron. So they probably need a little bit more research to be able to state that indefinitely, but it's just kind of cool to see that maybe the iron could have an effect on our DNA as well. Okay, I just wanted to add some ways to increase iron intake because it is such a big epidemic problem throughout the entire world. So some of those are just eating foods that are high in iron as well as vitamin C, because vitamin C complements iron and makes it easier for iron to be absorbed. I think it's important for people to talk to their health professionals about iron supplements if that's the way that they choose to go about it. Eating meats and seafoods to get dietary iron is a great idea because that's the iron that is bioavailable. And then eating tropical fruits with iron-rich vegetables and combining iron-rich plant foods with citrus. Again, just because of that vitamin C to foods high in iron ratio. So, most interesting things that I learned. I would have to say that the biggest thing that I learned was just what a prominent effect that iron has in our body. So because iron takes oxygen throughout our blood, if we don't have enough iron, we have a lot of symptoms that are actually easy to recognize, like dizziness, lightheadedness, shortness of breath. Those are all really, really noticeable in your daily life, and not having enough iron can cause that. So it's kind of crazy to me that such a tiny mineral that we need such a low amount of actually causes such prominent symptoms in our body. The second thing I would have to say is that iron deficiency, how it is the most common and widespread nutritional disorder in the world, and even the United States. So in a lot of third world countries, they don't receive enough nutrients, and it is very commonplace for those places to have deficiencies in minerals especially. And so it's just weird to see that even in the United States, there is such a big iron deficiency level. And then the third thing that I thought was pretty cool was that iron can be recycled in our blood. So the reason we don't need as much iron daily is because the iron just gets recycled throughout our blood, and I thought that was really interesting. From the media or literature. So what I found was a study titled Differences on Brain Connectivity in Adulthood Are Present in Subjects with Iron Deficiency Anemia in Infancy. This was published on March 7, 2017, so actually just a few days ago. And I also posted the link on here as well if you guys want to look at it. I found it on the BYU Idaho Library. So the purpose of this experiment was to explore the connection between the IDA, or iron deficiency anemia, in infancy and altered patterns of resting state brain functional networks in young adults. What they found was that compared to controls, former iron deficient anemic subjects showed posterior DMN, or default mode network, decreased cognitivity to the left posterior cingulate cortex. And then their suggestion was from this study was that these primarily results suggested different patterns of functional connectivity between former iron deficient anemic and control young adults. So basically what this was stating was that they did a study on those who have had iron deficiency as a child and those who didn't, and they compared the two, and they found that those who had iron deficiency as children had some cognitive growth issues as adults. So my take-home message would just be to understand that iron deficiency is actually a worldwide problem and a big problem in the United States as well. I would think that it's important to understand what iron is used for, primarily hemoglobin. I would also say that iron absorption is affected in many ways, and that we should look for ways to intake proper iron. So recommendations, I would just recommend to try to incorporate bioavailable iron into your diet. My aha moment was kind of just the symptoms, like I mentioned earlier, and how such a little amount of iron can affect your body so tremendously, like making you fatigued and such. And then future interest in this topic. So I would just consider anyone who watches this to maybe think if they are the ones that might have that iron deficiency, maybe without even knowing it, and if they are on the list for risks of those who may have it. And then these are just my resources, so thank you for watching.